Welcome to Commander Central, episode 343, and today we'll be taking a look at a bunch of the new cards from the brand new Jumpstart 2022 set. I'm Dana.
And I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
I'm cold. It's very cold outside.
Winter is officially here, and I don't like it very much.
Yeah, worst part is, winter's here, it's cold, and then my wife decides that today she's going to run around outside and put up all the Christmas lights, and I'm like, you're insane.
And have you gotten roped into helping with that at all, or no?
No.
Nice.
Well, she put up a whole bunch already, and then she's like, I don't like it, I'm going to redo it. And then she redid it, and I bought her more lights, because I'm crazy and I just fuel the fire for her. Certainly. Or something. But
well, Max isn't here with us this week. He just had surgery this week. He is doing well. They want him keeping him overnight. Wasn't the original plan, but he had a reaction to his anesthesia, but he's doing fine. He's home, and I chatted with him a little bit earlier today. I think I'm going to bring him some dinner tonight. So he's doing well, and he should be back on the show next week.
Yeah, he's definitely got a reason now not to wear pants.
Exactly right. Yes, I guarantee he'll be pantless when I stop by this evening. So we just had, the 50th set of the year that came out.
That's an understatement.
So why not do one more? Actually, so we haven't been doing set reviews very often because there's just so many sets. But it's the end of the year and Max isn't here, and Jumpstart's a nice small set too. So it's actually
this ain't a small set. What are you on?
the amount of new cards is smaller than we get in most sets. So it's a little bit easier to talk about just two of us too. So it made, since we don't do these very often, it seemed like a good opportunity to actually jump in and talk about a set. So we're going to do that here. But first, Chris, have you actually got to play any fun games lately?
I haven't played Magic in probably a month.
Probably the last time you played was that time you and I played at the shop that one night.
Yes, it was indeed. Yep, it's been a while, so
we'll have to get you in there some Tuesday coming up here and get a few games in for the end of the year.
Well, that's my plan anyways. We'll see if I can make it go because, things will start settling down now. I only got the one holidays coming up.
Right.
Life will be more normal again.
Yeah, once January rolls around, things tend to get a little bit quieter, at least.
Yes.
Particularly when you have kids. Yeah, right. This is the time of year when there's like band concerts and school performances and
parent-teacher conferences, report cards, breaks. It's just like a million things all at once.
Well, in my son's now, he's in high school now, and he's in the regular band. He's in the school jazz band. He's in their pep band. So he has it feels like a concert every other week, and then he has to go to every basketball game to play in the pep band and stuff. So it's just like relentless. It's just nonstop. Something every night I'm either going to or at the very least taking him to.
I give him 2 years, and he's going to be like, "This is too much going on. I need to slow down."
Well, if he starts dating or something, we'll see where that goes. If he's like, "Oh, I needed to devote more time," but yeah, no. Right now he's in a robotics club, and he just joined the improv team. So
wow.
So today, this morning, he had jazz band was at 6:30 in the morning. This is before school. So he had jazz band this morning, his normal school day. He'll finish his school day. I'm going to go get him after school. He'll do homework for an hour. Then he's got his improv group. And then after that, his robotics team. So he won't be home till 9 after that. So started at 6:30 and go until 9.
Does he do anything like hobbies or fun or anything?
That's all his hobbies. I guess it's all that stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. I remember doing that when I was at age 2. I had a sporting thing, and then I was in band, and I was in chess club, and in addition all that stuff. So I remember being that age. You have that energy when you're 15. You have the energy for that I do not have right now.
I get up after 6 hours of sleep, and I'm like,
I'm gonna die now. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, if you out there in listener land want to reach out to us and talk about how crazy busy your life might be, how would you go about doing that, Chris?
Well, you can reach us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can search us up on YouTube as well, CMDR Central, and you can find us online at CMDRCentral.com.
We are also available on Patreon.com/CMDR Central. There's a couple of different tiers you can join to support the show, but we appreciate whatever you do to support us, even if it's just clicking that like or upvote button. That all makes a big difference and means a lot.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just listening and giving us a comment about what you think is awesome.
And hopefully we can, I don't know if we've even had a chance to really talk, Chris, but there's an event in Minneapolis, Command Fest in May. So see if we can get all three of us over there for at least a day.
Yeah. I plan on making a day trip out of it at least. With my dialysis and stuff like that, I can't do like overnight stuff.
Yeah.
But definitely gonna make a day trip.
Excellent. So you'll have, anyone out there listening wants to get a chance to play with all three of us, that might be your chance.
Agreed.
All right. So let's take a look at Jumpstart here.
5 million cards in
yeah,
set.
Right. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jumpstart. It's a great way to play like just a fun, quick, casual game. I actually quite like it, and it's also a good way for them to throw a few new cards in there too to make people chase stuff down for their commander decks. So we're gonna primarily we're not gonna review it in terms of playing the individual Jumpstart decks. We're just gonna talk about cards might be useful for your commander deck. And the first one I'm going to throw out here that's actually, I think, kind of better than it looks on the surface is Angelic Cub.
I love the art on this card too.
So ridiculous. It's 1 and a white. It's like creature cat angel, and it's a 1/1. And that looks kind of underwhelming just looking at it. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, you put a +1 counter on it. And as long as it has 3 or more +1 counters on it, it has flying. Well, why I think that's useful in particular is because Arabo, Roar of the World, is the most popular cat tribal deck. Yep. And part of the problem with Arabo is you want to basically get something out as soon as possible and start, buffing and attacking. But there's, playing just some basic vanilla one-drop cat or something doesn't really get you very far. And once you start playing other creatures, you're going to ignore those 1/1s that are in your deck, those small creatures, because you can use Arabo's ability immediately, right? It's in the command zone, so you can start giant growthing stuff immediately. Well, later on in the game, if you've got too many of those small creatures in your deck, you don't want to be drawing those, 2-mana vanilla 1/1 or 1/2 cats or whatever later on in the game. This makes for a good creature that kind of scales. If you drop it on turn 1, or turn 2, and then start attacking with it on turn 3, well, not only does a +3/+3 turn into a 4/4 when it swings, it's going to get a counter put on it. And then after you did it a couple times, it gets 3 counters on it, then it gets flying too. So it's not a super strong card, but I think if you're playing an Arabo deck, you probably want to find room for that because it's a card that's going to not feel terrible to drop on turn 8, and it's one of the better ones to drop on turn 2 because of the fact that it gets counters on it, and it procs not off spells even, but just off abilities. So
yeah, the ability to give it evasion, in green-white, like if you're playing a robber or whatever, that's
for sure.
Priceless.
Yeah. So, and then the second ability on Arabo doubles the damage that the creatures, double its power and toughness. So again, same thing. You're going to put those counters on it, and everything you do to increase it, once you double that damage, that's just that much. It just doubles that much higher. So it's just it's a great card for that kind of deck.
Yeah, just exponentially keep getting bigger and bigger for every target on it, and yeah, pretty good.
Chris, what do you like here in white?
I actually like quite a few of the white cards. I mean, like some of the abilities on them are pretty sweet. Like, we'll start with the Distinguished Conjurer. Wow. Yeah, I need to move my computer screen because apparently that was crooked and I could not read that. So, Distinguished Conjurer is a 2-drop 1/2 human wizard that reads, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life. Yeah, whatever. That part I don't really care about. It's the other part for 4 and a colorless, exile another target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So a forever using blink ability is like broken, especially when you think about white in general. Mm-hmm. White, and if you pair it with blue or whatever, a lot of these have like those weird ETB abilities, and you're just going to keep ETBing stuff and getting massive amounts of value off of it. And I love that. I absolutely love it. It seems like Wizards have been printing more white cards to kind of give them a little bit more of a power boost, and it's really been, I'm digging it right now.
Yeah, and that gain 1 life thing, you usually think of that in terms of like a Soul Sister kind of effect, where whenever a creature comes into play, you gain a life. But like this, you're going to enable that too. It's not just happening passively. As you blink the creatures, you're getting a little bit of life gain off it too. I mean, it's not a ton, but like it's not nothing either.
Yeah, it's just a nice little staple down bonus effect. Like the gaining the life, it's like that's kind of like whatever in most people's minds. Is I think the blink ability is going to be huge in certain decks.
Absolutely. The first commander I want to talk about is Agris Crow, Eternal Soldier. Agris Crow is a character from the first Ravnica block. In this case, he's now a spirit soldier, so presumably he is dead.
Presumably.
3 and a white, vigilance for a spirit soldier. He's a 3/4. Whenever Egger's Crow Eternal Soldier becomes a target of an ability that targets only it, you may pay 1 and borrow, so 2 mana total, 1 in a white or 1 in a red, your choice. If you do, copy that ability for each other creature you control that ability could target, and each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So like in basically any ability you have that would, let's say, Mother of Runes, for example.
Oh, that's gross. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so the protection from Mother of Runes would target it, then you can pay that 2 life and have that spread to all of your creatures, right? So basically, I mean, this particular deck is going to, because there's only so many like useful targeted abilities in white and red that are beneficial versus negative. Red tends to like deal damage to stuff, and obviously you don't want to do that probably. But that's not something any other deck is really doing in these colors.
When I first read this card, I read it as a spell or ability, so I thought it was another Zada, and now after you reread it, I'm like, oh, it's just an ability. I'm like, oh, that's not quite as good as I thought it was.
It's not quite as good. It's just more difficult to break.
Yes.
But it's interesting, right? Like Mother of the Runes kind of thing. It gives your Mother of Runes can now protect your entire board state.
Protect yourself at the same time. That's gross.
Yeah. So same thing, like, I don't know why you'd want to blink your entire team, but like the Distinguished Conjurer you're talking about, where you exile another target creature you control, well, you now can blink your entire board with that ability. So you copy that entire blink.
Yeah, maybe you just have to blink them or something to untap them. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You attack with everyone, and then you activate the Distinguished Conjurer to target Argus, and then what you're doing is you just blink them, just untap them all. Give them pseudo vigilance.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like there's things that exile until in the case of Distinguished Conjurer, the creature comes back immediately. There's ones that don't come back till end of turn. So like, okay, so now someone board wipes, well, you blink your whole team out, board wipe resolves, and a turn they all come back in. There's a lot of different abilities you can copy with that. I'm sure there's ways to go infinite with it as well, but like it's just a useful, unique thing that we haven't quite seen done before, and that's always fun.
And it's in Boros.
Exactly. Which needs interesting things.
Yeah, if it was in like green or blue or something, I think it'd be a lot more easy to break.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Anything else in white you like, Chris?
Looking at them, I don't really think so. Not of like the new cards. Like I like Preston the Vanisher. I think he's quite amusing. So he's a 4-drop 2/5, and it's a rabbit wizard. So like when I saw this, it reminded me of these old books I used to read when I was really young. It was the Redwall series.
Oh yeah, I remember reading that.
And it was about like animals like rabbits and mice and all that are like warriors, and they fight against like foxes and weasels and other like nasty creatures. So it kind of reminded me of that when I saw the art. And then his ability. So his ability reads, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't cast, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except for it's a 0/1 white illusion. Well, that's pretty cool. We can do some reanimate shenanigans. White's got a few reanimate stuff. If you're playing black-white, you got that. Then he has an activate ability for one colorless and a white that says sacrifice 5 illusions, exile target non-land permanent. I think that's just really good. If this is already in a deck that's doing shenanigans where you can play creatures without casting them, reanimate them, whatever, and they just sacrifice all these illusions, and just you have like an outlet to destroy things, which is awesome. Yeah.
So copy all those ETBs. Something comes into play with an ETB ability, you copy it, get a second copy of the ETB trigger, sacrifice those illusions because you're no longer needed, right? You've got the ETB triggered off it. Sacrifice all those token illusions, blow something up. Yeah, that's really, really solid. 4 mana, that seems pretty fair too. It's not something we kind of have seen in white before, so I like the fact that this is a new thing.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about putting that in my Alesha deck because he's reanimatable
for sure.
with Alesha. And I'm just like, oh no, this is going to become real like toxic where I'm going to have to be doing all this math of these ETB triggers.
That's a lot of stuff to keep track of. Yeah.
You have Cathar's Crusade out, and then it just starts like triggering all this stuff, and you're like, ugh.
And some really like Lita Mechanical Engineer is kind of a new thing in mono white as well. Artifact creature, 3/3 vigilance. Beginning of your end step, untap each other artifact creature you control. So if you have tap abilities, you can reuse them a second time. It's kind of vigilance for your stuff as a blocker as well, and has a tap ability to make a 5/5 vehicle artifact token named Zeppelin. And again, that's an ability that your commander can attack and has vigilance, and you can still use it. And if you trigger the untap, you can, use it. Well, it does each other, so I guess it doesn't untap itself for that ability. But it has vigilance, so you can still attack with it and use the ability. And that's, again, not anything in white really does. So I like seeing that.
Yeah, and there's Zeppelins. They're just
exactly,
gonna burn,
yeah.
Just going to burn and crash. That's all that's really going to happen there. I do like that, though, that they're starting to put more vehicles in, and they're sticking within like a certain color combination, like your white. Was it blue? I think had a vehicle. Blue
got quite a few in Kamigawa.
Yeah. So they're trying to stick within those color combinations and not just giving it like how artifacts used to be strictly within the red, scheme of things or whatever.
Yes. So if we go on to blue and start looking at blue stuff, the first one that jumps out at me I want to talk about quickly is Alonda the Sky Dreamer.
Oh, I read this card and I was like, oh no.
Same casting cost as Tower End, not probably coincidental enough. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying.
Yep.
Which is what Tower End does. However, it also says whenever you draw your fifth card each turn, Alondra, Sky Dreamer, and Drakes you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand.
That's just a win con right there.
Right.
That's so gross.
It's a Tower End deck that kind of it plays like Tower End that you're making Drakes, but it has a win condition kind of baked into it as well. So if you can find a way to draw 5 cards, probably through some kind of a wheel effect in mono blue, there's a handful of them, things like Tolarian Winds or whatever. So draw 5 cards and get a really big buff on your creatures when you swing in for lethal. It also, the deck probably builds a little bit differently than Talrand in that you want to do as much stuff as possible at instant speed, so you can make a Drake on every individual player's turn.
Yes.
So you're going to run, because Talrand, the problem, such as it is with Talrand, is it kind of feels like it encourages you to play 30 counter spells as you make a Drake off every spell you cast. In this case, it's kind of encouraging you to run instant speed draw stuff, so you can draw cards on other players' turns and then be able to make Drakes off those. So I think the deck's going to look, while it feels like just another version of Talrand, I think it's going to the deck is going to be constructed in a much different way, even if you're still, making Drakes off spells. So again, it's different enough. I like that, and it'll go in my Talrand deck for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this, and it could still. You don't have to necessarily run the instance because it is second card. So
sure, yeah.
You already draw one card on your turn at the beginning of your turn, so you just have to play one spell to actually draw another card.
Right.
But I definitely think you want to do it at instant speed so you can attack with those Drakes the next time.
Yep.
And set it up. I mean, then you don't have to play cards like what is it, Crashing Drawbridge or something like that.
Right.
That gives the artifacts that give haste and stuff like that. So
and it is draw your second card each turn too. So it doesn't have to be draw off a spell. If you have some ability or something that lets you draw cards, that also works.
Yep. You have the Drakes when I can't remember what that enchantment is. Whenever a creature deals damage, you draw cards.
Yeah, like the coastal piracy kind of stuff, Bite into Thassa, whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Spit out another one and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Any blue ones you like here, Chris?
I'm looking for it because I know exactly which one it is. There it is. It is Kinesos, not sure how you pronounce that, Priest of Thassa. So it's 1 colorless and a blue for a 1/3 legendary Merfolk Cleric. Woohoo, go Merfolk! Wait, no, this card has nothing to do with Merfolk. It says if you would scry a number of cards, scry that many cards +1 instead. That's pretty good. It kind of reminds me of that, is it that Sphinx that does something similar to that?
The Scry Sphinx.
Yep. Well, then it has an activated ability of 3 and a green or a blue. It's kind of the hybrid cost.
Yep.
So you can look at the top card of your library. If it's a Kraken, a Leviathan, an Octopus, or a Serpent creature card, you just put that card into the battlefield. But if you don't, you can put the card at the bottom of your library instead. I like this because, as we all know, those big haymakers like that cost like 9
yes, they
mana.
do.
So why not just put it straight into play for 4 mana?
Yeah, every Leviathan or Octopus or Kraken tends to be ginormous.
The cool thing about this ability, though, too, is it does not say do it at a sorcery speed.
You can do it
You can do this on any person's turn, which is really good. And I'm just like, So I have a feeling this is going to become a big theme deck because I know a lot of people try to build like your Krakens and stuff like that. So this is going to be like a mainstay that goes right in it immediately.
And I think it's a deck too that like it doesn't do all the work for you. 4 mana is a cost. It's repeatable, so if you happen to have a lot of mana, you can use that multiple times in a turn. But it doesn't itself do anything to manipulate the top card of your library. So you have to then bake things into your deck that will allow you to scry or allow you to put things back on the top or whatever. So like there's additional work you have to do too to get it to to do the thing it wants to do. And I like that you have to figure that out versus like the card doing everything for you.
Yeah, definitely going to be, you know, like since he's Divining Top Ponder, I mean, those types of cards are going to be like mainstays in this deck, but you'll see other like named cards that you don't really get to play often, you know, like there's some 3-mana cards, you know, where it's like scry 2, draw a card or something like that. And that's what you want to do is stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, so then you find yourself, okay, normally I would maybe want to run, you know, a chart of course in a deck that's so efficient, but it doesn't actually scry. Do I want to put a thing here that's maybe slightly worse, but it's scry, so I can get the extra scry off it, and that lets me manipulate the top card in a way that I can't normally do. So, like, yeah, it's going to encourage you to run different cards than you might normally run that specifically say scry just to get that effect, and yeah, I like it.
Yeah, for sure.
Pirated Copy, 4 and a blue for a Shapeshifter Pirate. You may have Pirated Copy enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature in the battlefield, except it's a pirate, in addition to its other types, and it has whenever this creature or another creature with the same name deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So you copy a thing, and whenever it or whatever you copied hits somebody, you draw a card. That's pretty...
Even if that copy hits you,
yes,
you still draw a card.
Correct. Yeah, because you're not restricted to copying anything that you control. This is just copy a thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they're always trying to, like, come up with a way to make clones slightly better. And this is, you know, 1 more mana for a pretty good tacked on ability to copy something. And, you know, it's just generally useful. And if I was playing a pirate deck, I'd absolutely find room for this. So that's a cool card.
Yeah. I do like that. I've been seeing a lot more clones coming out lately, and I know quite a few people that I played with before have built like straight up clone decks where their whole game plan is to clone everyone else's stuff and then just kind of have a, you know, free for all with those clones and have a fun time overall. Any
other blue ones you like here, Chris?
Not really. I mean, not for the new cards. I mean, I love some of the reprints that they're pushing.
Sure,
out,
yes. Well, then let's jump on to black here. Anything in black you want to talk about?
I gotta find this one. There's a rat dude in here somewhere.
I think it's Ash. Is that Ash Coat of the Shadow Swarm? The first one there.
The Rat Warlock.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the one. So we got Ash Coat of the Shadow Swarm. It is a 4-drop 3/4 Rat Warlock legendary creature. So at first when I saw this card, I'm like, Warlock? Did they already print this card? So I had to look it up, and I'm like, oh no, they sure didn't already print this card. So Ashcoat reads, whenever Ashcoat, the Shadow Swarm, attacks or blocks other rats you control, get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of rats you control. Pretty cool ability. Second ability is, at the beginning of your end step, you may mill 4 cards. If you do, return up to 2 rat creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So the reason I like this card is we have Relentless Rats, and I don't remember what the other rat was, but there's 2 of them that allow you to have as many of this card in your deck as possible, but they never had a good general to go with it.
Right.
And this one right here just straight up says, guess what? All those rats, they're just going to be monsters now.
Yep. Yes. Again, this kind of has the win condition baked into, or a win condition at least baked into the commander a little bit. And it's always good to rats are always a popular like archetype in terms of creature themes. Yep. So yeah, I like that one quite a bit.
Now, who is the fellow that we played with who had the rat deck?
Patrick Sapola, I think.
Yeah, I know he had that rat deck.
Yeah.
And this is a card, like, when I saw this, I immediately thought of him because he's, like, one of the only people I ever saw who was, like, diehard on the rats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no.
I thought one interesting card here, Termination Facilitator, it's a human assassin, Facilitator, is a human assassin for 1 in black, has a tap ability to put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker.
Oh no, not more bounty counters.
Well, and that's what's relevant. It's whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it is dealt damage, you destroy it. There's a creature called Shovel, Bane of Monsters from back in Ikoria. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Shovel's not super popular, but that was the first thing I thought of was, that's just something else, because there's a couple of older cards that do bounty things as well. Like, it's one more thing that facilitates you. Like, if you were someone out there with a Shovel deck, all 4 people are super pumped to get their Termination Facilitator in their deck to make Shovel actually have 1 more way to put bounty counters on stuff.
I thought there was a Dimir general that came out recently, probably like 5 years ago, because, my recent's all screwed up.
Sure,
but they
right.
did something with bounty counters, too.
I'm doing a search. I'm not seeing one. There was one Mathis Fiendseeker that was in Mardu way back in the day.
Okay.
That puts
Maybe I'm thinking of hit counters or something.
It could
like
be. That does bounty counters. Mathis did, but it doesn't have green, so it doesn't work with Shovel.
Okay.
But yes, this could also go, Termination Facilitator could also go in that Mathis deck. So,
okay.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny. Good, and again, same thing. There's Mathis isn't really heavily played either. It's just a card that makes these two decks that don't see much play just a little bit better, and I always like to see that. I also think that Creeping Bloodsucker is kind of interesting. It's a 1/2 vampire. All it does is say at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. What's relevant about that is most stuff nowadays doesn't work like that. That was why Extort was so good in Commander, because you gain damage equal to you gain a life equal to the damage it's dealt, so you extort once and you gain 3 life, which was because Extort was designed before multiplayer was something people really thought about. Nowadays, it's usually it deals a damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. This doesn't do that. This is one of those kind of throwbacks to the old days where you deal damage to each opponent and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So you gain 3 life. So if you're in a life gain deck, that's actually a relevant amount of life to just automatically happen. So yeah, I wanted to mention that as well. Or you're in a
Mogus deck.
Exactly, right, exactly. Yeah,
I saw that card and it's on my list of cards I need to pick up for new cards.
Yeah. So I'm going to put it in my my Tavash deck where I can make those demons at the end of turn equal to the amount of life I gain. So this just passively gives me 3 life on the whatever demon I make. Just sits there, and if it would have been a 6/6 demon, now it's a 9/9. That's really nice. Anything else in black, Chris?
Not really. Black was kind of a little lackluster.
I actually thought that as well.
The cards are cool, but they're not super powerful or anything, or stand out.
How about in red? What do we got in red?
Oh boy. So red. I'm absolutely in love with Ardaz, Cobbler of War.
That's such a cool card.
Now, in usual EDH, it's not going to be super powerful, because it is a 2-drop 1/1 that has haste, and whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it comes in as a 3/1, has haste, you can swing out. Now, in a hyper-aggressive deck, really good. It's the ability that's really getting me. For 4 mana, you create a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste. You can only activate this as a sorcery, but that comes in as a 3/1 goblin with haste.
Right.
Which is bleh. So, I mean, I like it overall. I was thinking more for purposes of your 1v1 commander or dual commander or whatever. But I love the card. I love the art on it. It's just this crazy goblin with this huge ponytail.
Yes.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a super interesting card. It's tough. It's one of the problems I've always thought they had with goblins is Krenko's just so crazy good that trying to find something that gives you a reason to do something with goblins besides just play Krenko is really tricky, but they keep continuing to find weird ways to do that. So
yeah, and they did. Was it good Krenko they reprinted in this? I don't remember anymore. I know they reprinted a Krenko in this.
I don't remember which one it was either. But, speaking of interesting commanders in red here, we got Anti-Blight, bad influence.
Yes, I love this card
Bad
too.
influence, 2 and a red for a Devil Advisor, 2/2. Has flying, and whenever a source you control deals damage to you, put that many +1 counters on Anti-Blight, bad influence. And you can spend 1 and a red and remove X +1 counters from Anti-Blight to deal X damage to any target. So, I mean, obviously you're going to get counters put on here for damage when people attack you or whatever, but you're probably going to run a bunch of things in your deck that intentionally deal damage to you to put counters on her, which is, again, super interesting and not something we do very often. And the card is ridiculous. It's got a little devil on someone's shoulder whispering in his ear. That's amazing. This is...
It's a 2/2 flyer for 3 is really good.
Right, absolutely.
With abilities.
Yeah.
The only downfall of this card, that disappointed me, is that it said whenever a source deals damage to you. I wish it said whenever a source you control forces you to lose life or deals damage to you.
Right, yes.
Because then I would just play every fetch land, every little thing.
That's true,
and
yeah.
Be like, wahaha.
Yeah. But something like Pyrohemia or something where you spend a red mana to deal damage. It'll deal damage to you and Anti, but it'll also put a counter on her. So every time it's going to be above the damage threshold. Yeah, there's just a lot of goofy stuff you can do in these colors to deal damage to yourself that will make this creature huge. So
yeah, you think back to some of the older cards where they're yeah, during your upkeep, this card deals 2 damage to you to keep it around or something like that. I mean, those are what people are going to be playing with this kind of deck.
Yeah, very fun. Any other ones, Chris?
I'm looking right now because red was kind of interesting. They printed a new Mizzix, and he is no way near as good as the original Mizzix, and I was like, that's kind of disappointing. Yeah. But other than that, there really wasn't anything that jumped out at me.
Daring Piracy is a nice little enchantment for 2 and a red. Speaking of combat, on your turn, you make a 1/1 red pirate creature with menace and haste. Something that just passively makes tokens every turn is really, really good. In every situation, the fact that it has menace is pretty useful too. So, if you're playing a token-ish deck with red, that's a pretty nice thing to skull clamp every turn or or whatever after you swing with it. So I like that one.
Ogre Battlecaster is a pretty good card, a 3/3 for 3 with first strike. Whenever it attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard by paying double red in addition to its other costs. So let's just say it's a lightning bolt. So that's double red, so 3 mana to cast it. You deal 3 damage with the bolt. And then if the spell will be put in the graveyard, you exile it instead, which is usually what happens.
Yeah.
But it also says when you cast the spell, Ogre Battlecaster gets +X+0, where X is that spell's mana cost. So if you did cast a bigger card, it gets bigger, or it just becomes, like in the Bolt theme, it's a 4/3 with first strike that's swinging in, for 3 mana. I think it's really good value, and just the ability to recast the cards on it.
It's always useful, yeah.
Yes. I mean, you don't even have to build the deck around that. Just having that in a deck, if you have a high amount, like a high ceiling of spells in the deck, just to recast them is huge.
So let's move down to green. Benevolent Hydra in green. Green X for a 1/1.
Hardened scales all over again.
When it enters the battlefield with X +1 counters on it, and if one or more +1 counters will be put on another creature you control, that many +1 are put on it instead. So it's got a hardened scales thing baked in. And you can remove a +1 counter from it and put a +1 counter on another target creature you control. So you take a counter off it and put 2 on something else, basically, because of its baked-in ability. So, I mean, it's stuff that cares about +1 counters, but probably it's always just nice to find a fun Hydra for Hydra decks, because they always do goofy stuff, and I'm always just a fan of whatever weird Hydra we get in a set. So
yeah, the upside to this too is that this card comes in as a 1/1.
Right, yeah.
Its based power and toughness is 1/1, so you're never going to remove all the counters from it.
Right,
so
it will survive no matter what.
Yeah, it'll survive it.
Yep.
And so it's just another hardened scales ability to put into a +1/+1 counters deck.
Yeah.
It's huge. I'm looking at them like green was kind of lackluster for me too. I was like, some of these are good, some of these are okay-ish. I mean, this new monkey dude, I was like, really? Monkeys? What's going on here? I don't think there's enough monkeys in the game to really make this worth it.
It's a good way to punish people, I guess, for playing treasures, kind of. So that was funny. Yeah,
so we're talking about Kibo Uktabi Prince.
Yes.
A 2 mana, a 3 mana 2/2. Has a couple abilities on it. The big ability for me on this, out of everything, is that whenever Kibo attacks, defending player sacrifices an artifact. I think that right there, that ability is what makes this card really good.
Yeah.
It's just the ability to have something that you can recur to keep forcing someone to sack an artifact. Now, granted, treasures are floating around everywhere, so someone's just going to sack a treasure off, but if in a perfect world, they're going to be like, oh no, now I got to get rid of my soul ring or my mana crypt or something because that's all they have out.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the fact that this drops down and someone's like, oh, every treasure I attack, every treasure I sacrifice is going to buff this. That's that's I appreciate that as a bit of a treasure deterrent for sure.
Yes.
Zask, Skittering Swarmlord, I kind of like. It's 3 green, but it has a Golgari activated ability. So it has, first of all, you can play lands and cast insect spells from your graveyard. That's really, really useful in general.
Yep.
Whenever another insect you control dies, you put it on the bottom of its library, then you mill 2 cards. So, bug dies, you put stuff in your graveyard, and you can cast bugs from your graveyard. So there's kind of a self-perpetuating bit of value there. And you can spend 1 and a hybrid mana Golgari. Target insect gets +1/+0 and Death Touch till end of turn, which is pretty useful. And this thing's a 5/5 too.
Yes, a 5/5 for 5 is really good. I looked at this and I reread it 5 times, and I'm like, So then I started checking out erratas on my spiders, and no, they're just spiders. They're not insects.
Not insects.
And then I thought back, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Let's think back to what is it, biology or proper science class?
Sure. Yes.
And no, spiders are arachnids. They're not insects.
Yeah. So I think those are the kind of green colored ones we looked at. There's only a couple of new artifacts here. Are any of those anything that jumps out at you, Chris, that you liked?
So for instance, Infernal Idol is one that I was thinking about. It is 3 mana for a mana rock. And I was thinking back and I'm like, how many 3 mana rocks do I run in monocolor? And I don't really think I do. But if you are running monocolor, or if you're running 2 color in black, because it creates black, this would definitely be something that you should discuss, with yourself if you want to replace one of those other ones for this, because it has an activate ability of 1 colorless and double black to sacrifice it to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Yep. So it might be worth it. It might not. I mean, it's all about personal preference, but I prefer cards like this over if I were in those colors and I was playing one of the, is it the Clue Stones or
Yeah.
something, or something like that? Yeah, I would probably swap the Clue
For
Stone
sure.
out for something like this type of thing.
Yeah. Reddit was really hyped about this. I think it's decent being able to. One thing that's great about Commander Sphere is you can tap Commander Sphere for mana and then sacrifice it to draw a card. This you have to choose. You have to either tap it to sacrifice or tap it to make the mana. Maybe it would be too powerful if it did both. I'm not sure, but still.
Drawing 2 cards is pretty powerful.
Yeah. So still, I like it a lot. And similarly, I think Planar Atlas is pretty solid. It's 2 mana, but it comes into play tapped, and it only makes colorless. So like you're doing some trade-off. It's 1 less. It doesn't make colored mana. It doesn't work right away. But when it enters the battlefield, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library, and if you do, reveal up to 1 land card from among them and put it on the top of your library, and the rest go on the bottom. So it's a mana rock that comes into play for 2, which is always pretty nice, even if you can't use it right away. But it guarantees you're going to get it, probably anyway. Makes it much easier to guarantee you're going to get a land drop next turn. So if you're if you're running like 35 lands and you sometimes have a problem going over the top, well, this just makes it a little bit easier to hit that 3rd land, and then it's also there going to be a mana rock, so now you're up to 4, and maybe that's what gets you the ability to cast that draw spell to get the rest of the lands you need, whatever.
Agreed.
That's a really solid card, I think.
Yes. It is hard for me to put a land on top of the deck, though.
Yes.
Like knowing that's what you're going to draw. But in the early game, really good. Late game might even be good just for the ability to look at the top 4 cards of your library, and especially if you're getting flooded or you're not drawing anything and you just filter through it and be like, okay, these 4 cards, they were all junk, let's get rid of them so I can start digging into something that's actually good.
Yeah, and in fact, there's only 2 too. It makes it really easy to cast even if you don't necessarily need it. If something costs 3 or 4, that gets difficult to cast it and do what you want. This is much easier to be like, I might as well cast it. I might, if the game lasts 3 or 4 more turns, it'll pay for itself, and that's great. Even if you don't use the land ability, because that's a May ability, so you can just choose to skip that if you want to, too. I mean, and there were some really nice reprints here. Are there any ones that you want to particularly focus on and talk about here, Chris?
Not really any that I would like to focus on. It is cool that I'm seeing some of these cards that are getting reprints, like Karn Liberated.
Which badly needed a reprint. That was, almost $25, I think, before this reprint.
Oh, if not more, yeah. And price-wise, I'm not really thinking about it in price-wise. It's just that some of these cards were hard to find.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Like the Karn I was saying was hard to find. Lyra Dawmbringer's getting a reprint. I know she was hard to find for a while there, and stuff like that where I'm just like, yeah. The only thing I'm curious about with this set is there's so many cards in it. How did they divvy out the packs? That's what I'm curious.
I'm not really sure either. But yeah, Lyra was relatively expensive, and that was good to see that reprint. Walking Ballista had gotten up there in price. It's like that. I'm glad we finally got that. Another version of that. Goldspan Dragon was pretty expensive.
I forgot about Goldspan.
Yeah. Oversold Cemetery is an old card. It's an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. But that hadn't had a reprint since the original printing, I don't think. And it had gotten up there, I think, to around $15. I can't remember what the first printing of it was. I think it was Onslaught, if I remember right. But that was
oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was $12-ish, I think, or $13 even, maybe even more than that. And so, yeah, the fact that it got a reprint in the new frame is nice, and that helps with the price just a little bit. So I think that's a good one to see. Kiki-Jiki, is always a relatively expensive card.
Darn Kiki-Jiki.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a goblin theme in this set too, from what I was looking at. I do like that it gives you reprints that are older, because there's a few cards that you don't ever think about.
Sure.
That were cards in the world and stuff like that. There was let's see, so one's Engulfing Slagworm. I don't remember when that card was. So Scars of Mirrodin was last time it was printed, and it's a 7/7 for 7, and everyone's like, oh, whatever, that's basic. But no, whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, you just destroy that creature, and then you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And I'm like, when was this card made? I could have used this back then.
Yeah. Well, and we got a Rhystic Study reprint. I think the cheapest version of Rhystic Study is $30-some.
Yeah, and it'll probably go back up.
Absolutely, I'm sure it will. It's Rhystic Study. But again, it's just good to see some of these things get reprints that have been rising up in price, and any opportunity to knock a few dollars off some of these price tags is something I think we're always glad to see.
Agreed. No, overall, I'm liking the look of this set. It's definitely I think it's worth it to buy it. And I know that they made Jumpstart for each standard set or something like that.
Yeah.
And that, like, I was all like, oh yeah, cool, more Jumpstart stuff. What are they reprinting? And then you look at that and you're like, what are you doing?
Right, yes. Whereas this feels much more like that original Jumpstart block where there's just a lot of individual new cards and a lot of good reprints, and feels much more like what we were kind of expecting from Jumpstart.
Yes, and this will be fun to play too. I mean, grab 2 packs, jam. I'm assuming it's the same rules as the other Jumpstart, so you just jam them together and see what you get.
And off you go, which is great. And it's also, I think, a pretty good environment to teach new players in.
Yeah, I mean, one of you guys pulls like the bomb pack.
Sure,
and you're just like, sorry, I just crushed you.
Yeah, that was. I'm thinking that with the new Mishra, the new Urza commander decks, like, man, I don't want to like bust one of those out against a new player because those 2 precons are so strong. Yeah. So, all right, I think that is going to wrap up our look here at Jumpstart 2022. And it's probably the last set we'll have to talk about here until, next month, I guess.
I don't know. I pulled up Scryfall, and like, if you go into it and you're setting like what sets, it had like all the new sets that are coming up before, like after Jumpstart. And I'm like, these aren't out yet. Why is this on here?
Yeah, because Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One is like, I guess, next month. So it just never ends.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I haven't even seen any spoilers for it.
I don't think they've started. There's been a couple leaks, but no like official spoilers, I don't think, yet for it. But it looks like Proliferate is back. There's a new kind of version of Poison or Infect that we're not quite sure how it works. So that'll be interesting. My guess, from what I can tell, like looking at the couple cards, is it's probably basically Infect, but it's tied to a number versus the creature's power. So like it will have, I don't even know, I can't remember what the name of the mechanic is, but it would be something like 2. So it would put 2 -1 counters and give the person 2 poison counters, regardless of giant growth effects. Yeah.
To what was it? Poisonous?
To poisonous, yeah. But I think it also has the -1 counter thing tied in with it too. So we'll probably keep from screwing up other formats like Infect kind of did, or would if they added more Infect things.
Oh, there are those pros out there that find those things to break the format.
Sure, yes, yeah.
Someone will find something, and I'm going to be like, yeah, but
I guarantee nobody back in the day thought Glistener Elf would be a problem, but, winds up being an absolute bomb in modern, so who knows? Yeah. So all right, that is going to wrap up this episode. We'll be back next week with a new show. Until then, I'm Dana. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max, and you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find them on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker, and our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We'll see you next week. Until then, I'm Dana.
And I'm Chris.
We'll be right back.